You know, I've thought about it, and if it weren't for bodybuilding, I don't think I'd get out of that adult adolescent phase that I think for most of us nowadays just lasts way too long. Like I definitely think that helped expedite the process, which is crazy, Amanda, because I feel like if anything, people from the outside, when they look at bodybuilding, you know, it's narcissistic, it's very time consuming, it's selfish, all those things that we constantly hear. But when done right, it's a nice little playground, and it has a lot of parallels with, I guess you going through the real world and dealing with all the important stuff. Like you get to learn a lot about yourself, and you just there's just more things that are applicable in the bodybuilding world. The longer I do this, that I'm like, oh shoot, like that's applicable to the real world, and I kind of the way I behave here in bodybuilding, like that's me over here when I'm doing this, and it's just like it helps you. I don't know, like we're always talking about, like, eat bigger biceps, eat bigger calves. Like it's also made me a lot more transparent in other ways, and it's helped me figure out a lot of stuff, and it's helped me grow tremendously. And I don't think I'm the only one. I think a lot of people who've done this long enough, they will say that, yeah, it's been distracting at times, but there's also been a lot of good that's come from it.
Yeah, I can certainly say the same thing. And, to begin with, when I started this whole fitness journey, I was in an adolescent phase,
Yeah.
Exhibiting all of the features that you initially said, like just narcissistic, selfish, and just not very focused and deliberate, because it was so new and exciting. But over time, I really started to hone in on all of the gifts that I feel now that it's really given me, and reaped a lot of rewards from it. My initial intention with it was just to have a healthier relationship overall with my body. I'll disclose some. Beforehand, I had struggled with an eating disorder, and I was just doing things kind of like in a backwards way. And after I got my own help, I was able to approach fitness in a more compassionate and self-loving way. So I think that's another thing that we could touch on later on, how bodybuilding has helped me, and I know certainly others. But yeah, from the outside in, I have heard a whole mess of things from, oh, it's very admirable that you can be so dedicated and consistent, and I wish I could be like you when I grow up, to, why do you do this? This is so odd and strange. I don't understand this. So it's a whole pendulum of people's judgments without actually being in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you got to imagine it just must look so strange from like the outside in,
Yeah, certainly.
Like my mom didn't get why I could only eat the egg whites, why
Yeah.
I had to ask if there was oil in everything,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
couldn't just eat with the family. But, yeah, it was distracting and a little misguided at times, but, yeah, when you look back, because like you, I started when I was 16, and personally, I hate to think where my life would be without this. Um, it was, I don't know, it was different from other sports, because other sports I could totally get away with just like showing up and being competitive. Whereas this one, it's like, hey, if you miss 2 weeks, it feels like you missed 2 weeks. Um, and I needed discipline. I know myself personally, I needed discipline. I needed structure. And I remember I tried football, and among many reasons, I didn't like getting hit in the head. Like that was awful. But also, I didn't like being told what to do.
Right.
And that's how the football culture is. So gravitate more towards track because, hey, you just show up with your spikes, you sign up at the tent, go do your thing. When it's your race, you go and you do it, and that's your day. Um, And for a kid who had issues with discipline, with structure, with putting in the time, like this was different because every time I did all the right things, it would show up in my training, and I'm like, oh, geez, like that's how that works. And kind of slowly, I just started to reprioritize things, and perhaps to a point where it got a little unhealthy. And I can definitely say that during my late teens, early 20s, I probably skipped out on a lot of things that normal people of that age do. Wasn't necessarily a bad thing in hindsight, but I definitely swung the pendulum myself way too hard in that direction. But because the more disciplined I was, the more I was on top of all the details. Some mattered, some didn't. Either way, I saw a strong correlation with what was going on in the gym. So from the get go, like yourself, Amanda, like as an adolescent, I just needed that sort of. For me personally, I needed structure. I needed some omnipresent being that wasn't a person, like around, that would show me the consequences of not staying on top of my stuff. And bodybuilding did that for me. And as time went on, like more important things came out of that. But initially, that's what I got, was just like it taught me to be disciplined, because that's what people think of when they see all the wacky things we do. It's like, geez, you're so disciplined. Like, how do you do that? Which we'll get into, but yeah, no, I agree. It's a lot of things. Good and bad, but you stick around long enough and you tough it through, like you will figure out a lot of things about yourself that will absolutely help you with whatever is currently going on in your life right now.
It's so interesting that you shared, for you, you needed more structure and discipline. I needed more flexibility and just being more, I guess, have more flow in my life. And yes, initially with bodybuilding, you definitely have to exhibit those traits. And, we could talk about how bodybuilding attracts, people with type A personalities. But I saw in my process, particularly within the last couple of years, that the more I let go and I'm not so uptight with, tracking my macros and I have to train at a certain time, the more I noticed that my body responded in a better way. Because I was more relaxed to begin
Yeah.
with. So that was another golden nugget that bodybuilding has given me.
Yeah, it's amazing. You get both things out of that, because yeah, this does attract a lot of the type A folks. Like I get them all the time, and I'm like, hey, we need to chill out a little bit. And just like you, quite often what happens, it's like not only are we making the same progress, but it's much more comfortable. In many cases, it's even better.
Yeah.
And then it gets them to think like, shoot, like where else might I be doing this micromanaging that maybe doesn't really matter and just really stresses me out? And they start connecting it to other things that they might be doing right now, where they can take lessons from bodybuilding and apply it to said situations.
I'm curious, where was the first area that you noticed that some of these skills were transferable?
Shoot. Um, Two times, I think, when I think of milestones that were just like big aha moments. Um, I think the first time was saying no to friends in high school when it came to certain activities that I'm not going to disclose on this podcast. It led to some very bad consequences. And I remember one day in particular, it's like I I wanted to hit I think it was the 85-pound dumbbells on the incline before I turned 17. So I'm like, I need, because those were the biggest dumbbells at my little foo gym. So I'm like, I need to go in there and rock these. So no one was going to stop me from partaking in this workout. So got that done. Bad stuff happened. And then as time went on, more bad stuff started happening to these people who I would associate with. And I just kind of put two and two together, and I'm like, wow, like this has kind of kept me away from that. And I made a bunch of new friends that were way more positive, that were way more encouraging, because that's what happens. It's like, hey, you want to make friends, it's like pick a hobby. Like that's a great way to do it. And that's what the gym ended up being for me. So it really helped me swap out people in my life. Um, and the second time, I remember this was right after a contest prep where I I had completely emaciated myself for the first time. I was really proud of that, and I had a terrific season. But still, like this weirdest things would scare me. That like when I would stop and think about it, I'm like, you just did a like this thing that was like pretty incredible of a feat in itself. And I remember walking. It was my organic chem class, and it was day one, and I'm just like, what? This class, because most big classes are 5 units because it's calculus, because it's physics, it's like it's just letting you know that this is going to take up some of your time. This one was 6 for some reason. It was like the big warning, like, hey, we're going to wreck you. And I was so freaked out. And I stopped and I thought about it, and I'm like, man, there's people in this class who are going to get A's, and they would be astonished, and they would say that thing that we hear way too much, like, how do you do it? I could never do that. You're so disciplined, about what I just did. So I'm like, if I can do something that's like incredible to them, and I think if they really wanted to, they could probably do something similar when it comes to what I just did. At least when it came to their goals, like maybe I can do this. Maybe I can take what I did for bodybuilding and apply it to this course. And much in the same way, like, because getting so lean, like sometimes you don't want to go to the gym. You don't even want to get up and like do all the little things you usually do, right? But you do it because you have to, and because that's your goal. You want that end result. So it's like, okay, like this will add up to that. So the same thing, I took that mindset, applied it to that class, and studied when I didn't want to study. When I got frustrated, I took it the same way. I'd take a frustrating day at the gym, like, oh, I'll be back and we'll get this, that sort of deal. So those were the two first times where I'm like, wow, this is powerful. As distracting and high maintenance as it can be sometimes, it is powerful.
Wow. Yeah. That was a great word to describe it. Powerful. Um, for me, I just have this like flashback of me being at the gym, and this hones in on my rigidity back when I started being at the gym on Christmas Day. And I know some people can say like, okay, that's awesome. You're dedicated. You're getting your training in. But I knew in the back of my head, I was missing out on valuable time with my family. And so I had this kind of paradox of emotions. And this was when I was still living in Miami. This like sense of guilt, but also this kind of like pride, like I got this training session in, ha ha ha, like I'm superior than all of these other plebes that aren't training. But I was able to, with that feedback, I was able to check myself and ask, is this what I really need to do to achieve my goals? And it sort of transformed into, how about I become more strategic and I plan out, like my training sessions for the week. So I'm not missing out on, holidays and, important family events. So it's kind of like an inverse of your experience.
But I've been on the other side of it too, like as well, where the pendulum can swing so hard the other way, right? Because when I started working really hard at this, I'm like, wow, like I'm putting in some good, honest work, and sometimes more than that. So shoot, let's. It's like you don't want to fall into being like the former version of yourself. So you better stay on top of that. You better stay on top of that. And then before you know it, it's like you're gassing yourself out, and you're going like harder and harder and harder than you need to be. And this was all because I didn't want to be lazy Bert again. I didn't want to fall. Like, it's like people who are overweight at some point, right? Like who are overweight at some point. It's like they're deadly afraid of going back to that. And that's kind of sort of how I was with this. So there was a point in time where I think it was when I started to count calories for the first time that and tracking my macros that I got so obsessed because that was a new thing I had just added and I saw the fruits of
Yeah.
that labor. And for a good like 3 or 4 months, like I was just like, no, gotta be on it, gotta be on it. I have to hit those numbers within like 5 grams, like this, because I need to. No, I can't give you a good reason as to why. I just need to. And eventually, yeah, you find yourself all the way over in that end. And again, it exposes you. So it's like, man, this is like there is addiction in my family, right? Like where they can go too hard in the paint with certain things, and I'm like, this is you with bodybuilding right now, dude. Like you need to pull it back to somewhere in the middle because you were doing really well there, and when you picture that version of yourself, like you can see yourself doing that for a prolonged period of time. So I've had it the other way where it had exposed sides of me that I didn't even know were there to begin with.
Yeah, this reminds me of just simplicity and how
Yeah.
sometimes we can overcomplicate things. I certainly did. Even with even with my warm ups, it was like I have to, use all the bands and floss and foam roll. Um, it was like its own little workout before getting
Hmm.
training in. But simple things are so much better. If you could just find something that works for you, that's the most important thing when it comes to being consistent with your
Hmm.
training. Find something that works for you because really complexity is the enemy of execution. You're not
Yeah.
going to want to stick with things because it's just too hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Shoot. I mean, even like now, whenever I take up like a new hobby, I took a fly fishing course. It was a few months back, and I just wanted to be good at everything like right now, you know? And my buddy had like a super expensive rod, and I'm like, do I have to get myself one of those? And I didn't understand certain concepts like, how to read the river, all these little things that I wanted to figure out now. And I had to put myself in the position of like a noob, like entering this world for the first time. And it's like, you don't need to, layer and layer and layer it. Like it can be fairly simple. And as long as it's consistent, like time is your biggest ally here. And again, if you're simple, you don't overwhelm yourself with things, like eventually you'll get pretty far. So, like with bodybuilding, like especially when someone compliments me too much, I'm like, well, I suck at a lot of things. I'm just really good at this one thing here. You'd hate to see me doing X, Y, and Z. Uh, I have to remind myself whenever I enter a new world that it's like, okay, it's like, remember how things work here? Same thing applies over here. So just put that noob hat on yourself, and do your best, and just be persistent with it. Um, so yeah, it's helped whenever I've explored something new, and it puts me in the seat of like what a noob is likely to feel like when they're like in the other side of my computer screen and we're going over, what we're going to do with them.
Yeah, sometimes I forget because I was the type that just like fully dove in, kind of like what you shared of just like,
Yeah,
okay, let me get all the pieces together before I actually start practicing.
yeah.
But that is where you learn out in the field, um, and even making mistakes.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um, Making mistakes and figuring out like, oh well, that didn't work out for me, and that is a huge parallel with life. I mean, that's a guarantee. We're gonna make mistakes, and we're gonna be faced with challenges. Um, and bodybuilding was a microcosm of that. Um, and also learning how to be okay with making those mistakes. That was a tough lesson.
yeah. I mean, when you think about it, like everything you know now, it's because it was corrected at some point, most likely, right? And yeah, bodybuilding. Sometimes the mistakes can be like, I guess it can induce some pretty big mistakes. Where like, I kind of take that back. Like it impacted some important things in my life. But generally speaking, it's a pretty safe place to make mistakes. Like, okay, you weren't bracing right on your squat, things like that, and you learn, and the same thing goes for life, right? Where you know what you know because of mistakes, because of past experiences, and it's okay, and that's how we become wise with it, I guess.
Right. Yeah. One thing I like to help my clients internalize is when we accept our weaknesses or areas that need improvement, then that's the point in time when we can actually work on them with more clarity and objectivity. Because otherwise, we're just going to be clouded with our own self judgment and we're not going to be able to move forward and learn from it.
Yeah.
Hey 3DMJers, this is Andrea Valdez hopping in to let you know about our latest course in the 3DMJ Vault called Lagging Body Parts. It just released last month. It's over 2 hours of video from the coaches going through the biggest to the smallest details on how to identify, address, and improve an unbalanced physique. You'll learn some quick strategic tweaks to bring up smaller muscle groups like biceps and calves, while also learning how to do full-on specialization cycles and program overhauls to address larger muscle groups that might even require a fully unbalanced program in the long term. To get access to the Lagging Body Parts course, become a Vault VIP member at 3dmjvault.com. If you're already a subscriber, this course has just been added to your student dashboard at no extra cost, and you'll now have all 14 of the courses we've ever made thus far. If you're not yet a subscriber, you can sign yourself up today at 3dmjvault.com and get everything from this new Lagging Body Parts course to the lifting library, transitioning away from tracking, prep positioning, our fat loss Q&A collection, and everything in between. Again, that's 3dmjvault.com to become a Vault VIP member and get everything we make, even courses in the future, for just $12.99 a month. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the rest of the show.
I was telling you before this podcast, I read that one book, the Detox Nation, and it made me realize how good habits and bad habits are kind of like one and the same, because sometimes there is things I know I should be doing or I shouldn't be doing even, right? And I don't do them. But when it comes time to like gym, for example, I could feel however I feel, so long as, it's nothing too extreme, and it's like, and I'm there, and even though I was out of it 30 minutes ago, like there I am, like hacking away at a hack squat, like nothing, right? Like that was never the case. So like bodybuilding makes me realize it, and I think prior to that, like I've always kind of thought of it that way, because people will always compliment you on how disciplined you are and how they wish they were more like you. And it's hard to take that compliment, because at this point it's such a habit that it's just a knee-jerk reaction. It's just something you do. So of late, especially, it's just made me reframe a lot of the behaviors that I feel like need an intervention of some sort, where it's like, okay, much how bodybuilding works, like, we can kind of chip away at these things, and you can get it to the point where maybe they're not your favorite thing to do, but like you do them or you don't do them. Right? So I'm like, okay, as long as I stay on it, make those small changes, like I didn't get to what I'm doing right now with my bodybuilding overnight. Like when I look at how I started, it started with 3 days a week, and then 3 days a week was hard sometimes. Like sometimes, Friday night, I just kept prolonging when I would go to the gym. And then eventually got to eating protein after like the workout. And then eventually it's like, oh, I need a total amount of protein. Let's do that. Oh no, you need these foods. So, but it was a slow process to get to that point. And now like I'm managing all these things that to most people seems a little crazy, but admirable. And so I stop and I think about that, and I'm like, well, you're trainable. You can learn. Like it's like you can take this and totally apply it to those behaviors you want to modify. So right. I've that's been my thing of late, where it's just like, okay, like we can do this. It's not going to be overnight, but hey, that's what I tell people who come to see me. It's not going to be overnight. It's going to be a process, and we're going to take the proper steps to get there.
Yes, I say the same thing to my clients. Awareness is the biggest factor.
Yeah.
in helping them. And I tell them, like, this is going to be a process. It's going to be a journey. You're going to be repeating some of the same patterns, some of those same habits that weren't helpful for you. But if you are consistent in applying it, there's like some magic that happens in the background, and it's self-trust, it's self-respect. Because if you tell yourself, oh, all right, I'm going to go to the gym later today at 5, come 5 p.m. I'm going to put on Netflix. I don't really feel like going.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'll go tomorrow. Okay. Next day comes. All right. For sure. I'm going to go today. Again, you don't go. I mean, that slowly erodes your self-trust.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to be consistent and develop that relationship with ourselves, essentially. Bodybuilding has become a form of self-care for me.
Yeah.
It certainly has. That's one of my forms of therapy. And that's a place where I can channel a lot of energy. I know, Bert, for you, that for sure that is a Zen zone for you as well.
Yeah, it's a big anchor. Like I can look at maybe the last 10 years and yeah, we've had some things happen in life, but I hate to think what it would be like if I didn't have this form of self-care there in place as an anchor, as a placeholder. So I'm very grateful for that. Very grateful for that because again, at this point, it's just like I just appear at the gym at 6:30, like every day. It just happens, right? So I'm old faithful in that regard, and yeah, like I said, with the stuff right now, it's like right now I'm trying to set up these little intervention plans for things that I want to change, and much like with my athletes, like I want to set them up for the first round, I want to set them up for success. So it's like things that I know we can do, but they're momentum builders. They might not seem like a whole lot. They're not these huge asks. They want more, but it's like, hold your horses. We need to get some momentum first.
Yeah.
You need to build yourself up, right? Your confidence in that you can get stuff done, that we can check most everything off the list for a while. And then, okay, we can push a little bit for that next step. So again, like if it wasn't for bodybuilding and those parallels, I think it'd be something where if I hadn't seen it work out so well on this side, I think when it comes to other things that I want to do with myself, it would have been just a little bit more abstract for sure.
Yeah, it is. Oh, were you going to say something?
No, I was going to say, no, so I'd like, if possible, and I feel like there's something there that this athlete that I'm dealing with has maybe mastered in their life. Like maybe they're this like big time like stock trader or something. It's like, hey, you're good at that. That didn't happen overnight. What was that process like? That's how this is going to be. So
Yeah.
I'll look for little things that they've done so that, like it's not as abstract. It's like, hey, you're a star here, man. Like, hey, you make some like bomb ass baked goods. I've seen your stuff on Instagram. Like, it's going to take a while, but we're going to get this to a level that's similar to that.
Right. It's just going to continue building a relationship with yourself. For example, mindfulness. Bodybuilding has certainly helped me connect more with my body, with proprioception and balance and mind-muscle connection. That's a huge thing that we talk about, especially in the gym. But it's also helped me apply that outside of the gym. And I'm not just talking about like tuning into how sore I am after training or starting a new mesocycle, but also like regulating my emotions and regulating my nervous system. And this is something that I also teach my clients, getting connected with our bodies. This is such like a important vessel that we operate within the world. And bodybuilding has helped me kind of slow down and really feel into my muscles, feel into my organs, feel into just my nervous system and figure out how to soothe myself.
Yeah, my version of that is like I get cranky like if I'm going too hard. Like if I'm
Yeah.
exceeding what I can adapt from, like I'm like, Where did that come from?" And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we've been kind of redlining it for a little bit. And again, that's a skill that if it wasn't for bodybuilding, like a lot of people don't realize that sometimes, this happened because this happened over here. And yeah, it was like 7 hours ago, but that's why this is happening right now. So yeah, in regards to just the mind and body awareness, it's uh, you can't help but learn that if you do this long enough, I feel.
Oh, and even a step further, like with more abstract things, like recognizing patterns
Mm.
within your behaviors, patterns within relationships, um, and activities, because yeah, you're interacting with those things with your body, so you start to see
Mm.
um, just overlap in how we continue to do things that are working well for us. Maybe we're hitting walls, or maybe we're doing and engaging in a way that's not helpful for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think for me, if it wasn't for bodybuilding, for example, like when it comes to like the goal setting thing, um, I didn't really get how that works. And like now here I am, like like I know after this next season will be over, like I'll be thinking about the next season. Okay, this is what the 2-year plan kind of sort of looks like, and I'll like that's weird to people to think of like of things like years in advance and work on it so deliberately on a daily basis when like the goal is like nowhere near the current vicinity at the moment. Um, so yeah, like if it wasn't for body, like it's just so many things. Um, and obviously, like the longer you do it, the less like you get in terms of progress. But there's like an almost an inverse relationship there between like the physical gains and like all the stuff you get up here and how you mature. So once it really starts to slow down, I think that's when it gets really exciting because there is a whole set of different gains that are on the horizon. Like once you have to be more mindful, once you have to really think of what you are doing and whether or not it is benefiting you. So to me, that's probably the most exciting part about going, I'd say, beyond like the last quarter of the intermediate phase is that you arrive there. Stuff gets really stubborn, but now you really get to know yourself.
Right. I would say the most difficult lesson to really um, integrate has been patience for me. Just
Uh
being
huh.
patient with seeing results, being patient with, whether that's with like a mini cut or a long cut or even a gaining phase or seeing more weight on the bar, just being patient with the process and learning to be present throughout it instead of just focusing on the end goal.
Mm.
Because, man, if I do that, I'm going to be miserable the whole time. And, that absolutely applies outside of bodybuilding. If I'm working on a craft, or if I'm just trying to have a better relationship with someone,
Yeah.
um, I need to be present and slow down, and be very aware of what's happening rather than forcing an outcome. Because oftentimes I've also noticed that what we want and the goal that we want doesn't always look like how we project.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so being patient. That's been a stubborn one for me.
It's funny because for me, when it comes to bodybuilding, not so much, but when it comes to other things,
Mm,
absolutely. Like I find myself there right away. Like with the fly fishing thing. It's like, hey, like I need to be a stud at this like right away, and like 150 yards like down the river, like I see a guy casting and I'm like, man, that's like the guy with the 315 bench press at the gym. Like like he's just so smooth with it
yeah.
and I'm like dude, that's the big guy at the gym right there. Like that's that's the guy everyone wants to be like. And you're not going to get there overnight. So whenever I enter a new world, like I think that I have to remind myself that hey man, at some point it's like you were 150 pounds like soaking wet, and look at you now, dude. You're doing pretty well for yourself. So it's also, I feel, I think when it comes to privilege, it's also helped me out a lot there. Um, it's made me more aware of my own privileges, because when it comes to bodybuilding, it's like, damn, I got it pretty freaking good. Like it's been a pretty sweet deal. Like this was almost handmade for me. And I think if it wasn't for this, the physiological things that maybe I have going, but then also just a lot of the right things that like just led up to being that way. It's like I met the right people. Uh, you know, it also made me realize that certain things are just kind of out of your control, right? And you can really like only like do your best with the cards that you were given, right? So bodybuilding pretty good, but there's other things where I'm like, man, I wish I had it this way when it comes to like family dynamics or lots of things, right? And I'm like, okay, well, it's kind of like the guy who has a hard time putting on muscle. It's like, okay, he might never be 190 pounds on stage, but we're going to do our best, and you're going to be better, and we can make this better in some way. So yeah, I guess having privilege here has made me reframe other places in my life where I don't have it that way, because a lot of the things that apply to this that have yielded the best results, it's like I can apply it to those other situations that have a much shittier baseline.
Right. And what I'm hearing through that is practicing gratitude, just gratitude for what you do have.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the just key ingredient to happiness.
Yeah.
Alongside just being present in the moment. Because when we're grateful for what we have, we feel abundant. We don't feel like we're lacking. And we're not necessarily searching for this emptiness that is perceived within us. And we're always going to have areas of improvement, but that's kind of part of the fun in life. Yeah. Otherwise, if we were the all-star in everything we do, it wouldn't be that fun.
No.
It wouldn't be drama, and we love drama.
We do love drama. Yeah. So I guess now, like I've been training long enough where it's like, okay, things aren't just popping off like they used to, So now it's like I'm there now where it's like, okay, like be grateful for, like I have to find other things. Like now it's like, shoot, I just turned 39 like a month ago. I'm like, fuck, I'm 39. But how cool is it that I don't feel 39 because I've been doing this gym thing for a super long time. So I can't help but like, oh wow, this is like eating your vegetables. It all like adds up and it's good for you. So having to reframe things as an aging athlete is, it's something that I know is going to come in handy, like at some point. I don't know, like maybe I'm married 30 years from now and I've been married for 27 years. And it's like, okay, we're going to have to reframe that marriage because it's probably out of the like lust phase. It's, like, right. So things like that, where just as I go around every corner in my bodybuilding adventures, like there's always something new. Like, even though, shoot, I've been stuck on that weight on the leg press for like 4 months now, and that's really annoying. Like, still, when it comes to the other things, if you really, really, like you said, be patient, slow things down, like listen, like there's something there that like bodybuilding's trying to tell you.
Yeah. Would you say that bodybuilding has helped you become more open-minded?
Oh yeah. Here's a good example, right? It's like we all kind of fall into these like cliques and camps when we start out. It's like I'm a high volume guy, I'm a high intensity guy.
Totally.
Right? And you really become a part of that clique, and it like you really start to identify with that whole clan. It gets embedded in you, and then it happens very often that it's like, it's like the day a keto guy finds out that it's not the only way to do things, bro. Right? So Same thing when it comes to a lot of other worldly things. Like they pop up, I feel a certain way, but it's like, okay, but let's hold up. Let's like really examine this. Why do you feel this way? Is it right? Like, you know, that sort of deal. So it's made me a much better thinker because, again, at a certain point, past a certain level of development, it's like if you want to keep progressing, you're going to have to let go of these things and really sift through everything and figure out what is actually best for you in that context. And sometimes that does involve like letting go of things that you or ways of thinking that you wouldn't have seen yourself do otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, we can hold such strong attachments to our beliefs um, because it feels safe. It feels
Yeah.
safe to us. It's very familiar. Um, there are some people that will fight to the death to say that eating chicken, tilapia, broccoli, and rice, and maybe potatoes is the only way to get shredded.
Yeah.
Um, but like you said, just because you do something a certain way and it works doesn't mean it's the only way. And I mean, boy, studies are coming out on a consistent basis now, like just new studies and new data um, showing new ways of approaching
Mm-hmm.
nutrition and training from a variety of ways. And we can unconsciously close the door of opportunity that comes from being open-minded. Um, and something I like to do for myself is to get curious. Like if I notice that my beliefs are rigid, and I started doing that with bodybuilding, um, because we can be firm in our beliefs, but we want to be able to change them uh, when we realize that we've misjudged.
Yeah. No, that's very true because like I almost see it as two different hobbies now. It's like there's the bodybuilding and there's like the nerding out on things. Like
Yeah.
they're almost so separate to me now. So it's definitely made me just a much better learner and I think a lot more immune to getting on that tribal bandwagon when it comes to other things.
I remember you mentioning how bodybuilding helped you get out of a bad crowd. What about within bodybuilding? How has that shown up for you?
Man, I've made some of my best friends, I think, through this. Yeah. Um, and again, kind of like bodybuilders like the anchor for a lot of things in my life. Often it has been. I think the same can be said for them in training. It's like this one thing we all do, and it's a placeholder. It's what like unites us. So now I think more than ever, like especially at the gym, it's like I have this network of people. It's like, hey, if I need a plumber, it's like I know a guy. So little things like that to some of the closest relationships that people who I know are like really, really there for me. Like if it wasn't for the sport, I think especially right around my age, like I think that's one thing I see with a lot of adults. It's like they just don't have a whole lot of friends, and because of this, it's like man, I am very fortunate. So yeah, you hang around a gym long enough, you go make some good friends most
Yeah,
likely.
absolutely. I can certainly say the same thing that I've met some of the highest caliber of people, just like full of soul and just good, kind-hearted people um, who really get it and really get this aspect of myself. And I've also, because I've been able to establish that within the bodybuilding fitness community, um, I've been able to kind of venture out and find my people outside of the fitness industry and that also honor and nourish other aspects of myself. So being able to see, the fruits of that labor within bodybuilding has made it a lot easier to practice that outside.
So I guess there's a whole lot more to this besides just being jacked and tan,
Yeah.
right? Right? Um, you look good. You look better naked than you would have otherwise. But I think a layer deeper, right? Like your insides are just so much better in a number of ways, and your actions are so much better in a number of ways. And Yeah, there'll probably be some periods in your life where it's hard to manage everything, and this can be a little overwhelming, and you might be a bit off balance. But like I said, if you really pay attention to like what the wind is saying in the gym, um, geez, like the stuff that you can pick up on is life changing. But I think it'd be like that for any world, like that fly fisherman guy who I was just
Yeah.
absolutely like fangirling. Like I think he had been doing it for 20 some years. So I'm sure it works the same way when it comes to other things as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, it looks a little different on the outside, but the process is probably very similar. Yeah. I mean, I could say the same thing as, as I'm developing my skill as a therapist. I have to integrate all of the stuff that we listed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and we've gone over a lot of stuff. Any other things that you can think of?
It's a lot of people, they might be at those stages because I'm always, or at least a lot of people, maybe not so much me because I interact with our folks all the time, but there's this huge assumption that the majority of the athletes we work with, it's like they got their stuff in order. They're these all-stars, they've been doing it for a long, long time when it's not the case. So if there is something I'd love for the listeners to like really focus on and do a little homework on perhaps is just pay attention to, I guess, how you behave and go about your like bodybuilding adventures, because you inside bodybuilding, there's a good chance like that is you when it comes to your relationships, when it comes to your job, when it comes to school. Like it's the same you, and you probably have a lot of similar things going on for you that help you when it comes to those worlds, but then there might be other things that kind of hold you back in bodybuilding that are probably very applicable and worth noting when it comes to things outside the gym.
And wherever you are in that process, a big takeaway I want people to leave with is, as you are, you're okay. Just enjoy that process, because there's so much that can be taken from it.
Yeah. What a nurturing sport at the end of the way. At the end of the day, when you think about it, right? Like that's not what people think of when they think of bodybuilding, but it's nurturing. It helps you grow.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. So, all right, 3DMJers, we got to go work on the things we need to work on outside of the gym with the life lessons that we learn inside the gym. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks, everyone.
What's going on, 3DMJers? Eric Helms here. Thanks for listening to our podcast. I just want to take a second to tell you about MASS, Monthly Applications in Strength Sport. This is a monthly research review that I put out with Greg Nuckols, Dr. Mike Zerdos, and Dr. Eric Trexler, where we cover the most up-to-date, peer-reviewed research in the world of strength and physique sport that's directly relevant to your practice as a coach or an athlete. We provide our reviews in written format, but also, since you enjoy our podcast, in audio roundtable reviews where we discuss the research in depth. Finally, we also do video concept reviews where we cover a broader topic in video format for your learning. For fitness professionals, you can take quizzes on MASS content and earn continuing education credits for most of the biggest certifying bodies in the fitness industry. If you want to sign up and get a subscription, head over to 3dmusclejourney.com and click on the Products tab. Thanks for your time, and thanks for listening.